Hello, folks. So we've only got about 25 minutes today. I'm going to move quite quickly, but if you want to follow up with questions at the end, that's great. Or just find me on LinkedIn or wherever you want to find me. I'm happy to answer questions at the end. So just very quickly here, just a quick agenda. I'll do a quick intro and background about me, where I've come from, where am I at today. And then just wanted to share some kind of hard lessons I've learned when like changing industries. Public safety is an interesting space to design in. It somewhat has its own conventions and rules, and some things are more important in that space than maybe building sales software or consumer software or software in different industries. So that's really what I want to cover today. So quick intro. A long time ago, I was from a little town in England called Harrogate. It's very pretty there. One of four. I was either going to be a soccer player or a designer. That was the only two good things I was good at school. Got my first computer, fell in love with it. Went to design school, went to London, worked there for 10 years, then moved to San Francisco, and now I'm in Seattle. So this is just a quick flick book of lots of things that I've done. Not gonna pause for too long on any of these screens, but really just a flip book of all the kind of things that I've done. So what do I do now? As I kind of mentioned, I'm at Axon, and our kind of company moonshot right now is about cutting gun-related deaths between police and the public by 50% in 10 years. We're in the second year of that moonshot. And it's really what motivates me to get up every day. I think as you get a bit further in your career, you need to find that mission that really kind of pushes you on to do your best work, and you really believe in what the company are doing and what we're all about. So here's our CEO, Rick Smith. Very much a visionary guy, and awesome to work alongside. And here's some videos. I'm not going to play these in this setting, but if you want links to them, or if you want to, maybe I can send out my deck afterwards, and you can have a watch of some of these videos. But I'm just going to skip over them for now, just for time. So to give an idea of what we're doing at Axon, it's kind of these four themes or areas, like detecting what happens out in the field, like where do we need law enforcement, fire, medical, and then managing those resources smartly and efficiently. And then situational awareness, when I'm driving to that event, how do we give enough data up front so that officer or whoever that public safety person is, enough information up front so they arrive on scene with the right information and can manage the event effectively. And along the way, there's a lot of communication that happens from dispatch, from the command staff, from a real-time crime center to the officer in the field, on foot, all those kind of things. So that's the area that I kind of work today. Here are some personas and some kind of capabilities of the things that we design. Not super interesting, just going to kind of flash it up. So to get on to some of the lessons that I've learned and some do's and don'ts, I've kind of broken this down into like three areas. Like when I was starting out as a designer, what do I wish I knew that I know today? And then when you become a manager, what does that look like? And some of the hard lessons I learned there. And then specifically around designing in the public safety space and what makes it challenging but interesting. So things I wish I knew when I was starting out. So I was very competitive and I was competing against other people in my team. Wasn't helpful, definitely held me back. So just focus on being that team player and focus on what's your best self, and don't measure yourself against anybody else. There's always going to be somebody smarter, faster, and better looking than you. So just take that on the chin. Another thing around like picking a job, you know, like there's all these kind of blue chip names and glamorous companies you can go work for. But I found like picking a manager, so that hiring manager conversation you have when you're interviewing at that company, I'm always going to lean on picking a manager that I really inspires me and somebody who motivates me and somebody I look up to and I think I can learn off. I'm always going to kind of lean on that rather than the company itself. Everybody talks about talent. I always talk about it being overrated. Oh, there's a phone ringing. I don't know how to stop that. I'll just keep going. Hopefully you can hear me. And so to get good at anything, you just have to practice a lot. So don't think that you can't do it because you're not born with talent. I really think that's a fallacy. And then I think a lot of designers early on just focused on pixels and glamour and something that's sexy. And I think where they fall over is they don't really kind of have that grounding of what the problem they're solving for and for whom and in what situation. I think that's something that I've learned the hard way, that the visual slick design and that animation emotion or whatever you want to do to make it sexy, that's easy to do. Truly understanding the problem and setting out in the right direction is much harder. It's a marathon, not a sprint. I do a lot of running. I think this is just about finding your own pace. There's no point of working a 12, 14-hour day if for the next 2 days you're useless and you're tired and you're angry and you're grumpy. That just doesn't work. So find the right pace for you. And measure the design against business objectives. So a lot of companies, you'll have OKRs, or we call them missions and metrics. So always understand how that piece of work and what that project is rolling up to. That's how you got kind of going to be able to somewhat measure the design and judge the success of the design. Like, you want to roll that piece of work up to the highest level mission or metric that the business is chasing, and just measuring the design against that and the impact of that work. And then another thing is, like, focus on your strengths. Like, I know leveling guidelines and stuff like that is somewhat challenging. They expect you to be good or great at everything. And I just feel like when you're building a team, and it doesn't mean ignore those weaknesses, but you're always going to be really, well, hopefully you're really going to be really good at one or two things. And I wouldn't shy away from being really great and being a standout candidate for a role or a job based on those strengths. So just a little bit of balance there. So when I say focus on the problem and the people and the users, so just spend time with customers. So this was a driver appreciation day, keep trucking. Every time I was designing something, I was thinking about one of these customers or users that I've met, and kind of saying to me, oh, what would Bob think about this? And just really kind of grounding my thinking on working in users. This is a quote about golf. We're not going to read it today, but it's really about that practice makes perfect. Like, it didn't come easy, and I think all the best people in the world, in whatever industry or discipline that they're in, it just takes a lot of work to get good. So just be okay that just the quantity of work. Yes, you want quality work, but the quantity of work, especially in an early career, is very good to kind of get under your belt and learn by doing. Next up, we've got things I wish I knew when I became a manager. So this might be relevant to some of you folks who are either in management or thinking about becoming a manager. It's a it's a hard job. But like, the first thing is about leading by example. Like, you are the culture. You can't blame like other things. Like, just you set the tone every Monday morning, have the right attitude, be well rested, be positive, be energetic. You can't ask your team to do that if you're not doing it yourself. Set expectations. So that's when you're onboarding a new hire, if that's expectation with your partners, PM, engineering, those kind of things, doing that documentation up front, and setting those kind of guardrails and the routines and the systematic way that you get through a week and the systematic way that you actually ship work. It's just important to get them documented, get buy-in, and everything is easier after that. This is reevaluating the definition of perfect. So as a youngster, like, you're a perfectionist, right? But in reality, in the real world, one, you got to make money. Two, there's deadlines. There's customer commitments that you've got to get to. So perfect to me now is the highest quality work that me and my team can do in the time allowed. There is always time allowed is the important piece. There is always that constraint of time. And if any project I've done over the last 10, 15 years, if I was given infinite amount of time, the quality would be higher, right? So just kind of keep your expectations in check, and kind of redefine what you think is good enough and perfect. And good enough is the best quality you can get to in the time that's allowed. Focus on top performers. This is a really hard one, and I still struggle with this. Is in every team there is going to be top performers, and there's going to be people who don't quite meet the mark and don't quite meet expectations, right? And I think I've spent too much time getting maybe the underperformers up to par, rather than spending more time with the top performers and making them even better, because those top performers and making them brilliant is better for business. And I know that sounds cruel and brutal, but that's just the reality of the work. That it doesn't mean I don't care about everybody on the team, but don't spend 80-90% with your lower performers and only 10% with your high performers. Try and make a better balance there so everybody gets a fair chunk of your time. That's a hard one to learn. And the other one is it's just hiring bar raises. Like, I've slipped into like, oh, we're in pain and we need to hire, and this person can do the job. But are they better than the people you've already got on the team? And if they're not, they shouldn't get the job, right? The bar should always be rising for you and your team. And it's amazing what happens when you hire somebody who is a level up from the current performance of your team. It brings everybody along. It makes people look around and say, wow, that new person's great. I'm gonna level up my game too. So I think there's like a knock-on effect of that. This is one of our values, is being adaptable. And one thing in tech and in design is things are going to change, projects are going to change, scope's going to change, management's going to change, general direction of the organization could change. People are going to arrive on the team, leave the team. So just embrace that change. That's something that's always going to happen. And I think being flexible and adaptable to that change will make you more successful in your career. And the last one is like, as a manager, like I try and be nice every day, but really your role is to be fair. So somebody to understand where you're coming from. I want to be everybody's friend, sure, but that isn't a requirement to be a great manager. A great manager can just be fair, and that's all you can really ask for. And we talk about the team at Axon being a high-performing sports team. They're not a family, because that's unrealistic, right? They wouldn't pay you a lot of money if you were a family member. They would just expect you to work for free and all those kind of things. So we use the analogy of a sports team, and you've got to earn the right to get on the team, and you've got to earn the right to stay on the team. And there's always going to be that person below you who wants your role and wants your job. And then, I know that sounds quite brutal, but that's the world we live in, and that's what we should embrace if you want to work in technology and design in West Coast of America. That's just the culture. So accept it. Quick picture of the team, all those kind of things. Just moving a little more quickly now. So what's it like to design for public safety? A couple of things that have changed the way I build products is public safety. Like, their products have to be super reliable and stable, right? So if Facebook goes down, it's like, oh, that's annoying, that's frustrating. I can't see my friends post about something that's not that important. But if you try and call 911 or 999 and it doesn't work, that's lives are at stake. So those mistakes and that engineering excellence and being very thorough with your design process and make sure you're shipping the right thing. You can't do so much testing and let's like do a little experiment and see if it works. It's not that environment. The quality bar is a lot higher in public safety, because if things fall over and things fail, or somebody finds this UI unintuitive and can't complete the task, it can actually put lives at stake. So that's the big one that is just a bit of a game changer for me in terms of how I approach things. Measuring design in public safety, the key metric is often time on task, the success rate and all those other things. But as a dispatcher or call taker or an officer, time is a premium. And their main metric, a department or an agency, is reducing that response time. So somebody calls 911, how do I dispatch the right unit to the right place as quickly as possible with the right situational awareness that they hopefully can de-escalate that event, right? That is a key metric in what the experiences we're building. And you have kind of two customers, and this is what makes it somewhat controversial. Like, I have to do what's right for the public, meaning, do we use facial recognition and be invasive? And also I need to, my paying customers are police departments and public safety departments and stuff. So you've got that balance between the two. And we have a value at Axon that we say win right, and winning right is always right. And we're never gonna build or ship something that puts the public's trust in jeopardy. And so just balancing, we talk about it as like two customers. Even the public aren't paying us, we feel like we never want to kind of break their trust in the things that we put out into the world. Couple of things here is environmental factors. So we sit in offices in front of our shiny MacBooks. Let's just say a police person or cop, they're at the station, they're running to their car, they're driving 90 miles an hour with lights and sirens on, they're chasing a suspect on foot. There's all these different environmental factors, and the form factor of the hardware and the software needs to play in and might change depending on their situation. So really kind of optimizing for that. A little bit of a typo here, but change management. So things in public safety move a little bit slower. And the quote here is, the only thing cops hate more than how currently things are is changing how things are. So embracing change, like a lot of this software has been maybe used by that dispatcher for 20 years, and they know every hotkey, they know every shortcut, they're hyper efficient. So any change and any disruption in that workflow is problematic for them. And another thing in this space, there's a lot of training. So as a call taker, you go through weeks of training. So if that person goes through weeks of training and then you do a massive overhaul of that UI or that experience or that workflow, it's very disruptive to that individual. And you just have to be very careful. We want to move the industry forward, but you have to do a lot of hand holding and do it in baby steps and make sure that you don't break something in the middle of somebody's shift. And then just lastly here, this is a feature that we built recently. It's called Watch Me. So on the body camera today, an officer can press a button that sends a notification to their supervisor saying, hey, I want you to kind of jump into my live stream and help me with this situation. It might be a new hire. It might be somebody who just doesn't know how to handle this situation. It might be somebody who they need somebody to help them with translation, thinking of maybe Spanish. I'm not a Spanish speaker, but if a suspect's Spanish, like how am I gonna have that conversation? It might be a mental health expert or somebody else that can jump in through the body camera, watch the live stream, and talk the officer or individual through a situation. So, like, with that being said, imagine what the cop thought of that. So let's just be specific. Let's just say a police officer. They're like, imagine like somebody being able to watch over your shoulder and you're designing or writing code or whatever you're trying to get done. And your manager is just watching everything that you do. So from the cop's perspective, there was a lot of pushback. I don't want that big brother. I know how to do my job. I've been doing this for 20 years. So what we had to do, the way we designed it, was allow the officer to reach out for help, not that the supervisor automatically has permission to look over their shoulder into their world. So that's how, like, when I talk about two customers and what's right for the public or what's right for a supervisor or what's right for somebody, a patrol officer out in the field, you're always looking at that kind of two sides of the coin. There's always the other person that this, even though we thought this was a great feature, we got a lot of pushback from patrol officers saying, I don't want that. I'm going to quit my job if my manager can look over my shoulder and see how I'm kind of handling this situation. So we had to kind of flip the control of power there and empower the officer to ask for help rather than the supervisor just being able to jump into any kind of situation. So I'm not really going to talk too much about the UI or the design because I don't think that's super helpful. A couple of parting comments and then we can kind of move to questions. So another thing in my career is I've always set really big goals. As I said, from a small time in Harrogate, got all the way to San Francisco, which was my dream, to be head of design at a billion dollar company. Like I didn't think I would be able to get there, but because I committed to that goal, I wrote that goal down and kind of shared it with family and friends, it really pushed me on. My next goal is to go and work for NASA, and I don't know if head of design is too unrealistic there, but designing that in-rocket experience to hopefully get to the moon and Mars, that's what I would really like to do. And all my friends know that that's what I want to go and do. So over the next 10 years, I'm going to be working towards that. So I'd encourage you just to set those goals, however lofty they are feel right now. If you chip away them at them year on year, you'll hopefully eventually get there. You'll definitely not get there if you don't have the goal, right? And then just Ted Lasso, I've been watching recently. I thought it was funny, and I'll share this deck out so you can read them. But just some kind of leadership lessons from him, and it's a very funny show. But I think there's this clever undercurrent of really interesting and quality leadership skills or things that are said in the series that I think can resonate to anybody in a leadership role. All right, that was me. We got about 6 minutes for questions. So Catherine, over to you.
That was fantastic. I personally have a lot of questions, but there are other people that I'll let go first. I should introduce you on other notes to at some point to Marika. She's head of human systems integration at NASA. So she's spoken at UXDX before. So a really interesting character and absolutely loves what she does. And they're doing some phenomenal work there. Going back to Axon and working on public safety, so you broke it down into a number of like a few different core areas. The management one has the most questions in terms for you. How much documentation, how much is over documentation but efficient to establish expectations?
That's a really good point. I think you can't do it all at once. So at Axon, we have a thing called the Book of RTO, and it's the book of real-time operations. It's like our playbook, right? So I own the UX edition to that book. It's like a chapter of that book. And I have about, I don't know, 30, 40 documents. Most of them are templates that designers will use near enough on every project. But then I have like a wish list, right? And one of your team will hopefully help you with that documentation over time. So I think setting your cadence out for the week, what does a Monday, Wednesday, Friday look like? And so everybody arriving in the team know what my expectations are. And if you kind of follow those expectations of me and the leadership team, you kind of get a longer leash, right? So it's kind of to your benefit, right? Follow the rules to a certain degree, and then you get more freedom over time. So I think for every team, it's different. I'm happy to, like, after this meeting, maybe provide, hey, here are the top 10 documents I would write as a new manager arriving in a new team. I'm happy to print out that list if that's helpful. But it grows over time. And some things go stale, right? And that's okay too. And it's never finished. Like the Book of RTO is like very much a living thing. And the list of to-dos and wish list is probably longer than the things that we've actually done.
Yeah, no, phenomenal. And what happens when people are not up to scratch as your top performer, like not up to the same scratch, I think, as your top performers? Should they be let go? I don't know how to interpret that. Should they be let go? Is there a difference? Should people not be the top performers and that's okay? They keep the lights on.
Yeah, no, and that's a hard one too. You are going to get those people who are more steady and maybe I would say slightly less ambitious, and they don't just, they're not workaholics, but they do very steady and contribute across a year in a very fundamental way. So you can't ignore those people. Not everybody's going to be a high performer, and high performer is basically related to your level, right? So you can be a really high performer L6, but like once you get to L8, L9, it kind of feels like it's harder for them to maybe break out of that ceiling and get to L10, L11, a VP kind of level. So a lot of people have ceilings. I think number one is really spending time on those performance reviews. We do mid-year and end of year, and they have to be really thoughtful. And you can't go in there and break somebody, but you really have to focus on those misses, those areas of the opportunities, setting those goals for the next 6 months, giving them a career template and something that they feel on a weekly basis of how they bridge that gap, so they have evidence and documentation for when they come back to the next performance review. You can really see how they've kind of taken on and digested that feedback, and if they've really gone above and beyond to kind of bridge it. For many tech companies on the West Coast, you have 4 ratings, right? Your top 25%, which is obviously your top performer. You have achieves, doesn't meet expectations, and least effective. If you're in that least effective bucket for more than 12 months, you're probably in the wrong company. And that might just because maybe the situation, maybe it's the industry, maybe it's the culture. Maybe that's just, it's just not a great fit for you. So it's not always the individual. Sometimes it's the company and what's needed in that time to kind of do what you need to do at a business level. Because if you're not successful as a business, nobody has a job. So it's not anything against that individual. It's not like I don't care. I truly care about everybody. It's more about like, if the business doesn't work, nobody has a job, and you have to really consider that in terms of performance. And if we decide if somebody does have to leave, I'm the first one there helping them find that job and doing a portfolio review, helping them with their resume. It's not a nice thing to do, but as a manager, that's something that you're signing up for. And if that's too cold and too hard for you to do, you shouldn't be a manager.
Yeah, no, it's a really interesting point. And what's the thought concept of, let's say, you as Karsten, whether like you're saying stuff as a founder and entrepreneur in that instance versus at a large scale company, you are thinking of both the business side as well as the management side, and yet you stick with more traditional NASA or the government type of roles. Just curious.
It's just childhood dreams, isn't it? It's like always was interested in space. I've done a lot of things with telematics and maps and communication and in-car experience over the last few years. So I'm just taking that car, flipping it and turning it into a rocket. And I'm like, that's the job for me. And I think once you tell your like niece and nephew you're going to be like head of design at NASA, you kind of have to commit and get after it.
Love it. And I'll ask one more question quickly. How do you move fast when mistakes are costly? Now, you did touch on this a little bit.
Yeah, that's a good point. And I would say you don't move as fast. I've worked at startups, and if it's just a bunch of guys and girls in a basement and you all say, yes, it's good to go, you ship it that afternoon, right? And you probably break something. So I think we have a notion or a process called definition of done, which is a very thorough checklist from a design and engineering side and product side to a certain degree. That is, you have to follow every step before you're allowed to ship something. So it's that level of scrutiny around shipping that allows us not to break stuff. But you don't move as quickly is the honest answer.
Yeah, that's a lovely, nice way of framing it with the definition of done. I love that. That's almost like package that piece. Thank you so much, Karsten. That was really fascinating. Loved meeting you, and hope to see you again. And yeah, thank you.